Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. How have you been, my little sex demons? I am going to touch upon, or at least discuss, Gorean. Now, some of you might know what this is. Also goes by the short version of Gore, G-O-R. And it is a kink lifestyle that originated out of the novels of science fiction from writer John Norman. So, a lot of you are probably saying, oh yeah, I know that now. Those that participate in the Gore or Gorean lifestyle are, they tend to follow a master-slave relationship structure, although slavery is not required to be Gorean. Now, we are not talking about sex trafficking or anything like that. No, when it goes that far, please do call and report it. That is not something to play around with, because it is something very big that is going on, and at most times is very difficult to, actually get the people involved. And that has its own reasons, but that's not my topic when it comes to sex slavery. So, and we're going to talk about this throughout the session. And when we end, we'll touch on a few other tips that goes in with the BDSM sex slavery subject. So let's get this party started. This science fiction novel series that John Norman has put together, and it is pretty popular, especially since you can find it in Google. So it must be very, very popular. But the Goreans, they hail from the planet Gore, so that's where we get the short version. A lot of the people who read these books actually start adopting this sex life. And these particular books actually share the key concepts of servitude and slavery with the BDS model. So it goes together, although slavery and BDSM are not completely different, but are different in nature when it comes to sex. Might be very closely related, but there is a difference, which we'll touch upon later. Most people who do follow this type of sex slavery don't actually consider their sex style and kinky lifestyle BDSM. So remember that as there is a slight difference. Now, unlike many BDSM individuals that practice that, these individuals who engage in the Gorean or Gore lifestyle, they follow their rules at all time. This is a 24/7 sex slavery deal. You are never excused from it, whereas in BDSM, that is in the bedroom or within groups on how they want to do it, and that is between you and your partner. Although it is between partner or partners in plural, you do not ever come out of this particular role playing when it comes to sex. You're at this lifestyle. It is part of your life. This is how your life goes. Everything is worked around that. So there is one of the differences between the Gorean and the BDSM kinky lifestyle and the sex bed. With this particular sex slavery style, the slaves have to submit willingly to their masters without the need for bondage, whips, or other BDSM tools. So there's another difference. When it comes to BDSM, there are bondage involved and everything like that, whereas sometimes that is not exactly something that a partner will submit to willingly. Here, it is, you have to literally, because it is a lifestyle, submit to it fully. Now, this is just one form of sex that has come from a book and has become a lifestyle. People do use it. This particular, John Norman, who is the author, and with his books inspired this lifestyle, believe it or not, was critical of the physical and psychological harm that can come from BDSM, hence the meaning as to why it is where the Gorean will willingly submit to this, with all the chains, the whips, and all this, and the servitude and slavery. It must be a willing companionship. In his books, he kind of sort of suggests using symbolic safe substitutes instead, such as like the sound of claps to punishment instead of whipping. So you're using sounds, things. It really, I believe, works on the emotional aspect of it, because obviously in bondage you can put on the restraints and the whips come out, but they get put away. You're not going to carry around those 24/7, although I'm assured that people do this for a living, and this is how they go about their life. But people come to them and ask for that. They don't know what they're probably going to put on them or anything like that. It's actually at the discretion of the dominatrix or the dominating male in that. So, in Gorean, you go willingly, you live this 24/7, but there are the restraints of that. This is working more towards sounds and things that you think, working on that psyche part of it all. And, people maintain their gender roles when it comes to this particular type of sexual servitude and slavery. They don't, change their sex roles unless, they want. It is part of their roles that they're playing. But then again, it is willingly. And it does work more on the, like I said, the emotional part of it, I believe. So it's, there is, as most, I'm sure all of you are thinking, well, yeah, this could get really out of hand. It can. And I'm not saying, that it won't. There are always, it's not always man to female in the situation. There are some females who have men slaves. So it does go both ways with regards to this. Yes, the overall thing with it in the books, I believe, has to do with men over female, but there are females that are the dominant or the strong one in this particular sex slavery roles who have men slaves. You're not changing your gender perspective, but this can be adapted for same sex. I can't see where it would not. So don't ever think that this is just centered on that. It is not. It has been criticized basically by people who believe that this particular lifestyle is misogynistic, abusive, and manipulative. Okay, again, this is where it's working on your psyche, it's working on your emotions and having you asleep in that manner. Whereas with BDSM, there's whipping and all of that, where there are probably bruises, you're sore the next day, but what happens? They go away. Let's not mistake this for domestic violence, people, because that is against the law. However, I'm sure there have been instances where an individual who does practice BDSM has bruises. Someone thinks they're being abused by their lover. And trying to explain yourself out of that one to law enforcement would be probably a little tricky. You would really have to show them where all of your sex toys are. Your whips, your chains, your bondage pieces, and everything. So you really need to come up with a good reason for that and why. Because I don't want to be the person or the officer who has to write up that report. But it has to be done. Because if you took somebody and you're going to charge them on that, and with laws with domestic violence being so scrutinized and very, very much adhered to these days, you must be very careful in how you do this, making sure that marks do not show outside of the clothing or anything that they're wearing. Of course, if you're in like company and use a meeting for a gathering or something, in that case, you all know what they are and you understand it. You can talk about it. So there is that. Now, what does 24/7 slavery mean? It is, this particular 24-hour slavery is a BDSM lifestyle choice. Like I said, this is a choice. Gorean is willing. It sees an individual take an extreme submissive role in their relationship on a 24-hour day basis. And it runs 7 days a week, hence the 24/7. That slave that decides to take this lifestyle as choice gives up control in the relationship and agrees to obey the master's every request. This form of slavery, sex slavery, does differ from many other BDSM arrangements. where slaves surrender control to their masters only during the BDSM scenes. So there's the difference. BDSM is you're acting out a scene. And it's for that moment, however long that scene is played out. With a 24-hour sex slave, it is 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and it is willing. Your partner and you are in agreement to live this lifestyle. It usually works off of the emotions, not so much physical abuse, the emotional. Well, sorry, I said abuse. I didn't mean to say that. It lives off of the sexual allure of emotionally. How's that sound? Not the opposite end of that, where it would be emotional and or physical abuse. I'm assured whips come into play with this, but it is more of the controlling factors, the do, say, everything what I tell you. So that slavery master's relationship is a willing and fully participated in. Now on that note, and that little bit of introduction and a little background into what this is, the sex slavery deal. And again, not trafficking, sex slavery amongst adults, which is willing. And it does come from, originates from these novels, the Gore novels. So I'm going to take a break here. So get that snack, get that drink, come back, get relaxed, and when I return, we'll continue with more sex talk with Andra.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex. It's from the point of view of an older woman. Now, welcome back, my little sex demons, sex devils, my little horny devils. Hope you got that drink and that snack and you're relaxed, because we're going to go over the basics of what it is to be a Gorean or a sex slave. So these are the basics. Gave you a little bit of a history and the background and where you can find the books and who the author is. But this is a real lifestyle, although the books are science fiction. So I'm sure they get a little bit out there more than what is being done, but if you're following that lifestyle, it is pretty close to the books, I am assured. If you want to read them first, please do go and order them first. You can find them online. Not too sure about in a bookstore, but in a sex store, I'm pretty sure they probably have them. So let's get to the basics of being a Gorean Kajara. A Kajaras. This is really more than merely acting out like various positions and actions, as I have already said. Obviously, those who are learning to be Gorean, They are basically first exposed to the Gorean lifestyle via IRC, where there is like getting a knowledge of positions and etc. And it is, believe it or not, fundamentally required to go through this and to learn these positions through there. You gotta kind of sort of, if you're only staying with IRC, doesn't matter if it's that or the fact that you actually are going full force with your partner. Practice, each of the positions that you're learning in front of the mirror, so that you get the idea of what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel, and what and what nots, if you like or not like, things like that. And this way you kind of sort of personalize it to yourself as well and get to an accuracy of the positions. Hey, you might just enjoy the fact that you're doing them, you and your partner are doing them in front of the mirror. So there you go. So now, each position is important and needs to be studied with care. So remember that. Especially if you're going to go with groups of individuals who are practicing this, or you are intertwining it into a community. Going in and finding out that you're doing it wrong I don't think the outcome would be very good. But first timers, hey, ask them. I'm sure they don't care. So the general rules is the general slave rules. And there are tavern rules, which are for the IRC channel that I will be going over as well. But right now we're going through the general rules for slave rules. Slave rule number 1 under the Gorean sex slavery is all free persons are to be addressed as either master or mistress. If the sex of the free person cannot be determined from the name, master is to be used until the gender is clarified. Interesting enough, which is actually, if you think about it, it's just like how all of our laws in the states are written. They use the word he to represent all. So this is no different. So I know some laws have changed a little bit to update that, but he, her, his, hers, things like that. But for the most part, all of our statutes and things use the word he to represent all. So all individuals, to be exact. Slave rule number 2. Serve every master or mistress as if your well-being depends on being pleasing. Why? Because it does. So, very direct and to the point. Don't ever get out of that rule. Always adhere to them. And they always have to be in a pleasing manner, because this is what this particular lifestyle calls for. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, mister. Yes, mistress. Things like that. You're always pleasing your master. Slave rule number 3. While a free person may not always be right, they are, by definition, never wrong. Doesn't matter. Slaves always have the last word in any disagreement. The words, yes, master. There you go. Or mistress, like I said. Slave rule number 4 is jealousy and possessiveness have killed more slaves than disobedience. So if you're going to do this, you cannot get jealous at your master or your mistress if they are controlling more than one slave, or they're controlling somebody else's slave. You cannot get jealous. Jealousy is not in this. No possessiveness, because you are that, a slave, a sex slave. You are doing and you're pleasing your master or mistress. So, slave rule 5. Slaves do not use the first person pronouns. There is not I, me, or mine in a slave's vocabulary. Remember, you are willingly giving up everything. Nothing is yours anymore. You are not individual. Your master or your mistress is the I in the relationship, or the me, or the mine. Slave rule 6. Perfection of service and submission is the goal. Mere excellence will be tolerated. You have to give the perfect service to your mistress or your master. You go up and beyond to please them. Just pleasing them, they'll take it. But you really have to go up and beyond to please your master or your mistress. No cutting corners. Again, this is a 24/7 lifestyle, and you run everything, your life around this. It is centered around this and what you are told and told not to do, and how you please your mistress or master. Slave rule 7. Your collar carries the honor of your owner. Your attitude is as light as a feather or as heavy as a mountain. So your mister or your mistress dons you with a collar. You are to feel honored to wear their collar, because this is someone who has picked you as their slave, and you are willingly giving yourself to them. Your attitude, be it positive, can be indicative of, or negative, indicative of how your master or mistress will rule you. So think about it. If you're positive and very light, you are treated in that manner. If you're negative and disobedient, well, you got some stuff coming to you, some training. They're going to have to whip you into it. They're going to have to break you down and then build you up. Slave rule 8. If there are none requiring service, use the time to clean, cook, bake. Remember, you're still serving your master or mistress. Practice serving techniques with your sisters or learn about Goa. Do not sit and be idle. If you do not have to do anything, or you have a a break in your slavery, use it wisely to please your master or your mistress. You can be doing things for them, learning new things to show them, new positions, practicing big time, especially if you're new. Slave rule 9. And there are 10. We're coming to the close of our slave rules. Slaves possess nothing not given to them by their owner, including their name. What is given can be taken away. If you are entrusted to carry a name for your owner, or silks or jewelry, remember that these can be removed as easily as they were given. So your mistress or your master may not like your name, and they want you to be called something else. Or they'll buy you jewelry, or they'll buy you things. Wear them proudly. Don't take them for granted. But if they are misrepresented or abused, they will get taken away from you. So remember that as well. Rule number 10. Slave rule 10 is the merest whim of your owner is your highest law, and lawbreakers are punished. So, whatever they say to you, whatever laws they put into effect, rules and regulations put out by your master or mistress, is your rule, your law, shall I say, to abide by. No going and breaking those laws, unless of course you like the punishment aspect of it. That is completely up to you. If you want to break any of these laws, just realize you will be punished. And anyway, your master or mistress would like to punish you, I'm assured. So think before you're going to go and break any of these rules, because you will be justly punished. Now, we're going to go into the positions of Gorean lifestyle. There are lots of positions that slaves are required to know, as indicated in more than one of the various books. And all of these positions are indicated in the books on Gore by John Norman. So if you want to read up first and see if you're going to like it, please do so. The most basic positions are listed, and some of the masters or mistresses will teach them to you and require others in addition to the basic ones. So if you go out and you learn about them, but your master or mistress wants to teach them to you, I'm assured that going on the whim of acting as though you don't know would be your best bet if you do not want to get punished. But if they do obviously ask you, have you been practicing? There you go. And they tell you to perform a position, but it's not done to their standards, then they will teach you how to do it to their standards. I'm sure these positions are out there. They are basic ones that you are to know. However, I'm also assured that each mistress and master has put a spin on them, how they like them to be done, with keeping in with the structure of Gore. We are going to take a break here. And when we open up the next segment of the show, I will go over these positions for your possibly new sex slave Gorean lifestyle. So, replenish that drink, replenish that snack. Get back here, get relaxed. And when I return, we'll have more sex talk with Andra.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Now, I hope you are relaxed, because when we left off last, I was starting to go into the positions of the Gorean lifestyle as a sex slave. And this is where we are going to pick up. Again, this is a series by John Norman, where this particular real sex life and lifestyle originated from. It is a 24-hour sex slavery lifestyle, not like BDSM, which are scenes, and it's at that moment, and then once the scene is done, you get to your orgasm, boom, you're done. The next time you come around, you'll punish them a different way. This is a lifestyle. They have their own rules and punishments and things that you are required to abide by. So remember that. So let's get to our first position, which is the nadu. This is the first position a slave is taught. Okay, it is a general position of the slave when resting. The slave kneels before the master or mistress. The head is held high, but the eyes are downcast. So you cannot be looking at your master or mistress. The knees are spread widely, so you're basically straddled, so that the inside of the knees is a space as wide as the shoulders. Okay? Almost like getting into an exercise position. This is how it reads. So. And these, like I said, are all in the book, but I'm sure, you can go online and get these as well. The shoulders themselves are back with the spine straight. Kajarish, which is what that means, or slightly arched, kajara. Or slightly arched, slightly arched, kajara. The breasts are thrust forward. Outward, the hands are placed on the thighs, open, and the palms upward. The hips rest on the feet, which are turned in so as to take the weight off the arches. If the slave will be getting up and down often, it is permitted change the position of the feet so that getting up and down can be done with grace. So there is a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Niceness. I don't think that's the perfect word, but this is, they don't want you to hurt yourself. You're no good as a sex slave if you cannot perform. Let's put it that way. The next sex position a slave must learn is the bara. B-A-R-A. This is the second position a slave is taught. It is often the first one they experience because it is the position of capture. It is used for a variety of reasons, sometimes as punishment, sometimes merely for convenience. So the first position of nadu, you're not doing anything. It's just like the at ease position in the military. That is their position. Their at ease position in gore. In this, that's the first one that you'll be taught. However, it is not the one that you will experience. The bara is. So, the slave lays in the prone position. That is on the stomach. The wrists are crossed behind the back, and the ankles are also crossed in this position. So as to make binding of the hands and feet easier for your mistress or master. Basically, somewhat of an improvised, unbound hog tie. How's that one sound? Or your legs could be straight. I'm sure that's completely up to your master or your mistress. Next position is the Aisha. The position and the one following that I'm going to talk about next, used generally for transporting slaves, but they are also been used to like disciplinary tools for the slave. Now in the Aisha, the slave kneels in a position exactly like and except for the following position, following changes. The slave kneels facing away from the master or mistress rather than towards them. The chin is lifted and turned to the side to offer the collar for the attachment of a leash. So you're on a leash. The hands are behind the back with the wrists together as if already in slave bracelets. So this is kind of sort of their way of you're allowing them to put a leash on you. You're offering your collar to them. Bracelets is the next position. This position, like the Aisha, like I had said, is used for transportation. It is also used when a slave is to be confined for a period of time for chaining them to a ring, etc., etc. Slave rings are common on Gore. Most rooms have several, and the beds of free persons always have a slave ring attached to the foot of them. So, your master or mistress will be laying on the bed while you're attached to the end of their bed. So, this is so that the slave can be kept there at night for warmth or pleasure or both. You're right at their disposal. This position is generally like Nadu and Aisha in general form, except that the wrists are crossed as if already in slave bracelets. Again, no bracelets are put in. It is the mere action of it in the position. When used for discipline, it is not unusual for the master or the mistress to leave the slave in this position for quite a length of time. The slave bracelets used being those of the mind, again, emotional, knowing that your hands are crossed, and the image of the slave bracelets, so it's of the mind, and thus both stronger and more telling than the strongest steel. Your mind and your emotions are playing a very big role in this particular lifestyle. So you believe in the slave bracelets and them being behind you. You don't need them on. You don't need steel to be on you in order to abide by it. The slave lays on the back in a supine, however you want to pronounce that word, position, hands at the sides, the palms always facing upward. The legs are spread widely enough to be inviting without ungraceful. So you're basically ready to take in your master or your mistress and what they have for you. Again, the mind. It's the mind. You don't need to be bound or bondaged to the bed. Just having that in your mind and offering your body in that manner and having the action is enough to understand how it is or what it is to have that. So do remember that. So those are positions. Those are the very important positions to know. I'm assured if your mistress or your master would like different positions or it done in a different way, they will teach you those. But if you are going by the Gorean lifestyle, these are those positions that are to be used. Now, serves, and this is of the slave. So now this is the purpose of a kajara or a kajaris, is to serve their master or their mistress, in plain and simple terms. Now, in real life, this is basically the goal for those who are, who have read the book or are practicing this lifestyle. This service can take many forms, okay? Some of those that pretend to be Gorean are content to limit their participation to the IRC channels that are out there. They don't want to go beyond that. While this is understandable, it is not Gorean. It is just basically a fetish. Even though this particular lifestyle is a fetish, but it is a lifestyle. There's a difference between that fetish and that lifestyle. You have a fetish of things that are acted out in the bedroom on your partner sexually. Lifestyle 24/7. So, however, most new Goreans are found via the IRC channel route, and this is why the Gorean Foundation exist in this forum. So you find a lot of first timers there who will be there, and actually I'm assured someone will reach out if this is something that you want to do, or if you put it out there in the forum, a master or mistress who wants to take you in as their slave will probably reach out to you. But if you and your partner are already interested and you want to adapt this to your lifestyle, well, I don't think you need somebody else to come into that unless you want a third party. Granted, there are those out there who do take on more than one slave, I'm assured. Now, given these circumstances, learning to serve like a Gorean, Kajara or Kajaris is only, and I mean only, possible through practice. You gotta practice a lot. So, reading, if you are given that time to do so by your mistress or your master. Observation and experience. So the more you practice and you watch, you learn, and the more it's used on you, the more you know. Many, meaning a lot of new slaves, copy the method and manners of others they see serving. So this is, like I said, how you are going to learn. This is not an acceptable practice, though. Sorry, got you all up in arms over that one, and then I break you down. It actually is a form of, and where it demeans the service of the one copying and deprives both the one it was borrowed from and the one who is to begin serving from genuine thought and creativity. So you're not exactly giving thought to the process, you're just watching somebody else. True service cannot exist on IRC without creativity and a genuine desire to please. Ask for help from an experienced Kajara or a Kajaras. Ask the tavern keeper to assist you in finding a coach. See, this is what the forum's for. And practice diligently off channel before you try anything difficult, because the copying of the serves of others is to be avoided. We will not go, and they won't go in detail on any serves hear when they're explaining this because they don't want you to copy. Again, your master or mistress, getting the basics down, they will teach you, and you are to practice and observe and then do it to learn and have experience in it. We are going to take a break here, and when we come back, we'll go over the specific slave rules and those rules that apply to Tarn landing only, which is Tarvin rules. So you don't have to get a snack, you don't have to get a drink, but if you'd like to, please do. But do remain in your comfortable Kajarian Agor positions. And I will meet you back here for our final segment in the show on sex slavery, the Gorean lifestyle. So this is our last break in the show. So meet me back here for more sex talk with Andra.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Now, this is the last segment of the show, and as promised, I will go over some tavern rules to the Gorean lifestyle. And then I'm going to actually end the show with a brief discussion on masturbating on command, basically. So, let's get the party started. Now, remember, a lot of people, if you're into this, going onto the IRC channel first and going into the forum, looking at positions and watching to see if this is what you really want to do. Please do read the books, because this is where they all started. As science fiction as they are, it has been adapted into real life. They are from John Norman, so do remember that. They can probably be purchased in a bookstore. I don't think in your everyday bookstore, but probably in like an amazing store, a sex store, and definitely online. So let's get into our tavern rules. And these only apply to the Tarn landing only. And there are 13 of them, so we will go through them as quickly and as explanatory as possible. Tavern Rule 1. Intelligence and wit are to be rewarded. Laxity and laziness are punished. Rancher's rules. Tavern Rule 2. And remember, the reason, they want you to be participatory in it. So you will get punished if you are not. And they want you to, have that there. Tavern Rule 2. Offer the patrons food as well as drinks. Consult the menu often. So remember, there are more than one mistress or master. Please offer them a menu. I'm going to show this interchanging of slaves, or what is it you are actually looking for in a slave in order to pick who is best for what you want. Hence the menu, and consult it often. Tavern Rule 3. Pop-ups and macros in serving are to be avoided. So you don't want pop-ups, all these little things that come up while you are serving. You want to have clear and uninterrupted servitude. Tavern Rule 4. Since a slave cannot serve two masters fully at the same time, she cannot be in two channels. You need to pick one at the same time. Correct service is always the priority. The exception to this rule, and only the exception to this rule, is when a slave is in #wildflower, which is part of this channel. #wildflower is the Tavern Landing slaves R&R and training area. So you can be in more rooms than once during this because it is training. Tavern Rule 5. Fussing and fidgeting are to be kept to a minimum. You must remain still. Quiet beauty, wit and charm are preferred to noisy nonsense. No yapping, people. You must be subservient, or, okay, I might have used the wrong word there, but you have to be quiet. They don't want somebody who's going to be up talking blah, 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 blah. Not working. It's not working. Tavern Rule 6. Remember, they're teaching you and you're learning this way. You are a sex slave. If you're fidgety, if you're talking, if you're not paying attention, they cannot train you. Tavern Rule 6. Entry to provide service at Tarn Landing does not require permission. Leaving Tarn Landing does require permission. Just ask for permission to leave and it will be granted. So you can come in when you want. However, leaving, if you have to ask permission to leave it. You cannot just get up and say, all right, turn off the screen, turn off this, and leave. You gotta know, you gotta let them know, and they gotta say that it is okay. Tavern Rule 7. The first girl, Jewel, Tavern Rule, is to be obeyed as if she were free person when a free person other than Master Bluto is not present. So I believe the master of the tavern is Bluto. Her counsel, even when free persons are present, is to be listened to. You cannot ignore her. Punishment will follow with that, so remember that. Tavern Rule 8. If you are serving a patron, fix your attention on him and her only, not more than one. Otherwise, greet those who enter using master or mistress as appropriate. All free persons are to be served equally, regardless of sex, race, philosophy, or planet of origin. Slaves who pick and choose, you get punished. How are we going to break you down and build you back up in this? Come on. Tavern Rule 9. Visiting other taverns or inns or other places on Goa carries the risk of those places. Be cautious. Just like if we were to go to another country and break one of their rules, they will treat us punishment-wise by their rules. This goes here as well. Tavern Rule 10. Slave heat is only to be used if the kajara truly wants to entice the master or mistress. If you display slave heat, be prepared to be used as a slave. So you can't just throw it out there because they're going to take it. Remember that. Tavern Rule 11. There is a special channel for Tarn Landing slaves called #Wildflowers. It was a gift from the rancher to his first girl, Jewel. As a rule, masters and mistresses are not allowed there. It is a place for slaves to learn, relax, and play. So you do have a place to go as a sex slave to learn more, relax with other slaves, and basically just be yourself, I would presume. Tavern Rule 12. This rule can only be seen in the room upstairs, #Wildflowers. If you are a kajara or a kajaras, go there and ask. So that's what that is. And we are coming down to our last tavern rule. For our last tavern rule, which is Rule 13. Very lucky number. This rule can only be seen in the room upstairs. #Wildflowers. If you go, it's another one if you go there. If you are a kajara or a kajaras, go there and ask. So I've left 2 rules open-ended. If you are interested, go on there and check it out. The tavern rules, because that is what it is there for. So remember, that is something, if you are interested and this is something that you want to take up in your lifestyle with your partner and they are into it as well, do educate, communicate, and consent, because this is a willing lifestyle, and it is a 24-hour lifestyle, 7 days a week. Do remember that. There are punishments that do come with it. Now, as promised, we're going to go and talk about how, to basically masturbate on command. This is part of the BDSM, but it is still there. Now, this is in, if you have a dominant person and a submissive, and they basically tell you how to, masturbate, and you have to follow those rules. So, they say, touch yourself for me. Don't stop until I tell you stop. Ask how hard or how soft and where. It is, when it comes down to being kinky as a submissive person, or a woman, shall I say, usually the sexual command from your dominant partner is such a total turn on. So when they tell you to do something, you basically don't mind it, even though it is a masturbation. This masturbation is not to be alone, just for being alone, or having, when your partner is separated from you and you do it, because you're in the house all by yourself and you're horny. and you're not exactly going to get laid anytime soon. So masturbation is no longer that. It's no longer hidden. It's basically really out there now, and one of the biggest things that's done sexually. And masturbation does have a place in relationships. Even more better, especially in kinky ones. So this is kind of sort of a person's way of explaining how, being that submissive person, when their partner was away, they would call them up and tell them how to masturbate while they're on the phone or probably doing FaceTime. And it was, masturbating as part of a scene. It is really good in long distance relationships. However, at one point in time, you're going to want to get to the real thing. Orgasms being brought on by your partner. So remember that you even do that when you are in sexual intercourse play. So there are times when your partner will tell you to touch yourself or masturbate for me. There's a shyness that some people have with that. This is a way for you to get over that, and pretty damn fast, shall I say. So, it is really, really good. The dominant person may tell you to beg, or to rub your clitoris, or if it's going the opposite way where it's the female on male, they might tell you how hard to stroke, when to stop, when to go, play with your penis head, and stand there, or just be in front of them. Some men, just like women, just stand there in front of them, sprawled naked, or sprawled on the bed while they watch and dictate how they want you to do this masturbation. There are lots of, some people won't do that right off the bat with their partner because to them, they don't think, they're shy, like I said. So you won't masturbate in front of your partner. But nowadays, believe it or not, that's probably what you do first. Heaven only knows. And even before you get in face to face with that partner or partner to be, they'll have you do it right on the phone with them, or FaceTime it, or Skype it, or any video chatting that is available. It is there. But you can also make things up. Like, one thing was Masturbation Monday. So on Monday, that's going to be a masturbation night. Get out your toys, get all this. Your mate controls your orgasm. They tell you how hard, how to do it, where to put your fingers. And then, like, later on, if you don't, there are rules that come along with this. Whereas if it's male to female, one rule is the person has to tell their partner all the details of what they did when they masturbated. And rule number 2, didn't have to ask, but didn't need to let him know before you masturbated, or as soon as possible, so that they're aware, they're thinking about this. They'll to give you what to do and how to do it while they're not there. So this is the way of masturbation, basically on command. You are controlling that portion of them, of their emotion, of their being, of how it does. You're training them. So if you say, touch yourself for me, they know exactly what to do, what to ask after. So, or how to go a little further with that. So it's not always just stuck with one particular fetish. A lot of relationships have that in it. It is part of the sexual act, and it should be, because you're learning about yourself while your partner's learning about you as well, and what turns you on and what doesn't. It is a way for you to understand a little bit more and get you out of that shyness along that line and everything. So there is masturbating on command. If your dominant partner tells you, then you're allowing yourself to be that slight submissive individual in the relationship, which is not a problem. It is okay, because in most, if not 99.9% of sexual relationships now, there is an aspect of domination and submission. Working that into masturbating is a plus. You could still do it on your own, and even in your head you will hear your dominant partner throwing out commands to you. Have them tape their voice on a tape recorder, and when they're not there, turn on that tape recorder so you're hearing their voice giving you those commands. It's there. Try it. I'm assured it is being done. But masturbation is such like one of the first ways and best ways to find out about yourself and have your partner find out about you. When it's in a dominant/submissive relationship, it's even better, because now you're adding that aspect on where you're having someone instruct you on how to masturbate on command in front of them and all that way. So that is the end of my show. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I ask that you do subscribe to the channel and write a good review, because it helps me and it helps all of us at the GSMC Podcast Network. Also, please do find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because we are there. If you want a topic covered or talked about in the podcast, write it there. Ask that question. That's what it's there for. And we will see what we can do for you. But as always, thank you again for tuning in, and have a great night. And remember to practice safe sex. If not for your partner, for yourself. And if not for yourself, for your partner. Goes both ways. Also educate, communicate, and always get consent. So, good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.